Hey guys, in this month's top 5, I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite narrative poetry. I'm not a big fan of poetry. Let's just get that out of the way. Poetry, sometimes I just don't get it. Sometimes poetry can be a bit too flowery for me. Too much symbolism. Sometimes poetry just goes right over my head, not gonna lie. So yeah, back in high school, my college years, whenever it was that week for poetry, I never looked forward to it. But the thing is, I don't entirely hate poetry. It just has to be the right poem that speaks to me. And I did do a top 5 sometime last year, where I shared my favorite short poems. So I'll put a link to that at the very end of this video if you want to check that out. So the theme for this video is still poetry, but narrative poetry. Poetry that is a bit longer, poetry that tells some sort of story from start to finish. And that is quite honestly my favorite type of poetry. I love poetry that tells some sort of story. You know, it's easier for me to follow, I think, and easier for me to analyze. So yeah, the 5 that I have chosen for this video in particular, I hope these are considered narrative poetry, you guys. I had to do quite a bit of research for this because some of these I wasn't quite sure if they're classified as narrative poetry. So pardon me if I got something wrong here. And you know, the thing is with narrative poetry, there's so many forms of it. Like I said, when I was sitting there doing my research for this video, it's like there's so many forms of narrative poetry because you can have like verse narrative poetry, you can have lyrical verse poetry. I mean, it was really overwhelming for me. So hopefully this top 5 is correct. So enough procrastinating, let's get going into my top 5 for narrative poetry. At number 5, I have Beowulf by an unknown author. I think my favorite translation of Beowulf has to go to the translation done by J.R.R. Tolkien of Lord of the Rings fame. I think his translation is perhaps the most popular, the most well-known. I think that translation is what people tend to read if they do read it in high school or in a college setting, I'm assuming, because that's certainly what I read, and I really love the translation of that. But yeah, if you don't know what Beowulf is about, it's about this guy named Beowulf. He comes to this kingdom. It's like a Scandinavian kingdom, and this kingdom is being plagued by this creature known as Grendel, so it's up to Beowulf to kill and destroy Grendel. And over the course of this epic poem as it is, Beowulf, he gets a lot of fame and notoriety, he becomes popular, he becomes king. And yeah, not only does he have to deal with Grendel, but he also has to deal with a dragon by the end of the poem. And yeah, I definitely really love Beowulf. I was pleasantly surprised when I read it for the first time. I think the first time I read it was in a college course. And I remember being just really pleasantly pleased with it, surprised. It was just really fun and action-packed, which I wasn't expecting. And just a really good story from start to finish. And yeah, if you're someone who likes things like Game of Thrones and histories of Vikings, you know, things like that, warfare, you know, yeah, I think you will definitely love Beowulf if you've not read it already. At number 4, I have Sir Gawain and the Green Knight by the Pearl Poet. You know, I read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I read it for both a high school class and a college class. And I remember us talking about the Pearl Poets, and I honestly can't remember what that means. Even when I was doing my quick research for this video, I was having trouble figuring out what the hell Pearl Poet meant, but it don't matter. Either way, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, I freaking love this story, yeah guys. Of course, Sir Gawain being a knight of King Arthur's court. The story takes place like some sort of holiday. I want to say it's like some sort of Christmas holiday if I'm not mistaken. And this mysterious Green Knight comes to Arthur's court. He wants to have some sort of fight, and of course Sir Gawain is the one who picks this fight with the Green Knight, and yeah, drama and chaos ensues, and yeah, like in a year's time, Sir Gawain has to go meet back up with the Green Knight in order to fulfill his quest with this guy. Something like that. It's a pretty lengthy, complex little story, but oh man, I love it. It's so good. Kind of like Beowulf, the first time I read it, just so pleasantly surprised with it. I loved the story. I liked a lot of the themes and symbolism going on in it, the message by the very end, which is really great. Yeah, Sir Gawain. I think he's one of my favorite knights of King Arthur's court, especially after reading this story. He easily became one of my favorite knights of Arthur's court, closely following behind Sir Lancelot, of course. At number 3, of course, I had to put me some Edgar Allan Poe on this list, and I put The Raven. Woo, The Raven. The Raven is such a chilling and haunting story. I mean, even if you've never read The Raven, the thing is, if someone says to you, nevermore, what's the first thing that pops in your mind? It's most likely Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. Just, yeah, like I said, so chilling, so haunting, just really atmospheric. It's one of the most atmospheric pieces of longer poetry that you'll read, I think. And yeah, if you don't know what The Raven is about, it's about the narrator. I think he's an unknown or an unnamed narrator. He's just chilling at home, lamenting over the loss of his love, Lenore. And this damn raven keeps sneaking into his peace. This raven is just irritating and frustrating, and the damn raven won't leave the narrator alone. So yeah, it's just a great piece of poetry. I love it immensely. At number 2, I have The Odyssey by Homer. I'm sitting here looking at this list, and it looks like I have a lot of epic poetry on this list, but I think epic poetry is still classified as narrative poetry, correct? Well, like I said, guys, I'm not familiar with all the different genres of poetry, so hopefully this video has some sort of sense to it. But yeah, The Odyssey by Homer. My number 2 on this list. Whew, I love The Odyssey. The first time I read it was for like 9th grade English class, I want to say, and I wasn't looking forward to it, and oh my god, I loved it. It was so good. The Odyssey is about the Trojan War hero Odysseus. The Trojan War is over, he's made his way back home, so now it's time to go on another quest or something. So he leaves home, and he's gone for a very long time on his quest, and his quest just takes him all over the place, where he runs into various different Greek gods and goddesses and monsters, and it's epic, and it's crazy. It has some great humor in it on occasion, a lot of great action. So yeah, if you've not read the Odyssey, what are you waiting for? You need to get on that. And at number 1, I have Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti. What can I say about Goblin Market? Goblin Market is just so freaking good. It's not even funny. It's just absolute perfection as far as poetry goes. A lot of great visuals, a great story, a lot of themes and messages, and a lot of little things hidden under the surface that you can kind of read into, because a popular translation of this story is like this hidden notion of sexuality, maybe even lesbianism. And I just found that so intriguing the first time I read it, and me and my class were analyzing the story and whatnot. Just so good, very thought-provoking. If you don't know what Goblin Market is about, it's about these 2 sisters, Lizzie and Laura, and the shenanigans they get up to with these dangerous, evil, vile goblin men. So yeah, one of the sisters, she is taken into the clutches of the goblins, and the other sister has to try and rescue her. And it's damn good. It is so good, you guys. And just some of the greatest pieces of poetry. I wish I had maybe got a stanza or 2 to read to you guys, because it's just so beautiful when you say it. It just comes right off the tongue, and it sounds good, it reads good, it's just great. So yeah, that's it for my top 5 of narrative poetry. Correct me in the comments below, guys, if this top 5 is kind of incorrect, if I've mislabeled a piece of poetry here, if it's not considered narrative poetry. Like I said, I was just kind of terribly overwhelmed and confused about how to define narrative poetry. But yeah, for the most part, narrative poetry, as long as there's some sort of stanza rhyming going on or something and it tells a story, that's narrative poetry, I guess. But yeah, you guys, in the comments below, what are your favorite narrative poems? Let me know down below so I can go check them out. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.